Guitar Sessions, episode 39. Today, what we're going to talk about is it's another Game Changers. Okay, so we had the Beatles, we had Chuck Berry. This is our third Game Changers, and it's a style of music and a musical aesthetic that we're going to examine today. Now, what style of music is it? Musical aesthetic, punk rock. Okay, so why do I say that? Why do I say punk rock is important? Punk rock is vital. Punk rock should always be a thing, now more so than ever. That's what we're going to go into today. So before I go any further, we're going to take this back to like the 50s. Okay, in the 50s, we had this thing called skiffle music. It was Lonnie Donegan, who was the main guy. He was like the Kurt Cobain of skiffle music. He played this music that is easily played, and you could sing in it, and you're telling your story, and you had a wash tub bass, and you had a washboard, and you had a strum an acoustic guitar, maybe a banjo, whatever instrument you could afford. It was the working classes kind of music. When I say this, music has to be accessible to everybody. For me, that is one of my things. I don't think it should, I don't think race. I don't think economic I think you should have access to music, everybody. So with that said, 1955 Rock Island Line changed the world forevermore. When I say that, that was a big boom in the 50s in England, because everybody who was a kid in England in 1955, they learned how to strum a banjo. They learned how to play folk songs, and they rocked them up, and it was a really aggressive rhythm sound, skiffle music. Everybody's playing rhythmically, and this is how they learned how to do what they do. In skiffle music, all these guys, all of which, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Kinks, most of the British invasion bands, one of the things they all went through was the skiffle craze of the 50s. When they made it to the 60s, they took all the things that they learned, and all the stuff. They learned how to sing, they learned how to put on shows, they learned how to do all these things in the 1950s before there was ever any kind of punk rock available. So with that said, I liken the skiffle craze, and as I said, it inspired everybody. The Beatles the Quarrymen were the group before the Beatles. That's where Paul, George, and John had the band, and then he invited Paul in. Paul was a great guitar player, and and eventually they invited George. And anyway, with that said, the rest is history. It started with the Quarrymen, Lonnie Donegan, skiffle music. Lots of people were changed by it. With that said, we go up into the early, I guess we could even say the garage bands of the early 60s, when the Beatles came over here. That was a chance for America to latch on to something. This is what we can do. We start forming garage bands. Garage music of the 60s. That is the same as musical aesthetic. In the 70s, the poets of New York, they wanted people to show up to their poetry readings. And one of the things that they did very early on is they would bring music into their poetry readings, and little by little, all these poets like Richard Hell, Tom Verlaine, Patti Smith, these people would bring music into their poets. People would show up to these events. Eventually, there was a scene, and it became punk rock. That's where punk rock was born. There's lots of seeds of it, The MC5 was kind of a proto-punk. The Iggy and the Stooges was kind of proto-punk. But in the early 70s, then CBGBs came along. That whole thing, punk rock, was made in New York. And then it went out into the world. Same musical aesthetic. So what is punk rock? Well, there's many definitions for punk rock. And the definition that I'm going to cling on to, that I think is vital, is learn as you go. Learn to play something. Like on Monday, buy your instrument. On Thursday, start your band, and learn as you go. And then tell your truth, your musical truth. it's not for you to sound like you don't have to be a schooled musician. There is no gatekeeping. It is, let's start something and let's make a big noise and see where this takes us. And you can learn and bring things into your music throughout life. The Clash taught us that, and Joe Strummer, Mick Jones. Okay, they taught us that you don't have to just play power chords. You can bring in all kinds of things into it, but the courage to start your band the first week of your instrument, that is what punk rock. Also, the whole basic, that punk rock is taking back rock and roll of earlier generations. That was its main job. Okay, so by the 70s, the arena rock guys were like virtuosos, and they watered down what was considered to be rock was watered down. When I say that, Ramones always brings up Captain and Tennille, which I don't even think is rock, but the early 70s rock bands were kind of like, they played it safe. Okay, rock and roll is supposed to be exciting. Rock and roll is supposed to kind of scare your parents, scare the older generation. Rock and roll is a little edgy. It's going away from pop music. Okay, pop music at the time was like the Archies in the early 70s. Sugar, sugar. Okay, so punk rock was like, we're going to take this back. We're going to say what we want to say. We're going to write really cool songs, high energy, edgy, not perfect, but perfectly imperfect. That was punk rock. 89, 92. Nirvana did the same thing with Smells Like Teen Spirit. So I think punk rock is absolutely those musical aesthetics of, we don't have to be perfect to start our band. We don't, and get back to a place where it's guys jamming in a room. We're playing together. We're making this noise together. We're learning together. We're creating stuff. We're trying to get better, but we're learning to get better together. I think that's vitally important for anybody wanting to get into playing music. So, with that said, I have skiffle and punk rock taught us these many valuable lessons, and I've written them down because I want to get each one of them. Okay, so first one is get an instrument. It does not have to be an expensive instrument. As I said, these gatekeeping things, when I say gatekeeping things, you don't need a $3,000 guitar in order to play in a rock band. Okay, that kind of stuff. That's just goofy. Buy one that stays in tune. Buy one that make sure it's set up right. Good strings. The wiring works. Okay, and be inspired and learn on that. Number two, learn some things. Learn a few chords. Learn some rhythms. Learn some songs, like some basic easy songs. They can be basic easy songs. You take basic easy songs and you play with other people with it. That's how you build. Okay, these are little building blocks. Okay, don't worry about the equipment. As I said, make some noise. Okay, it's not about being perfect. Okay, one of the things that I'm about, it's like, so one of the things that to be cautionary over, kind of a cautionary tale, is with AI saying we can record songs without humans altogether. Okay, I want to take the music back. I think the rock and roll aesthetic that we play in a room, we create our own stuff, we go analog. You want to learn as you go, write some songs, tell the truth as you know it. I don't know, everybody has their own truth, but don't try, I don't know. In other words, don't write the song everybody else has written. Don't try to sound just like everybody else. That's completely unrockin'. Okay? Every signature rock band had their own sound, and so should you. Okay? It should be a collection of lots of different things. But record your truths and shout to the hills. Perform them for people. Put your music out there. All right? So I want to thank Lonnie Donegan. I want to thank the Beatles. I want to thank the Sex Pistols. And I want to thank you and Nirvana. Kurt Cobain and Nirvana. Yes, thank you all. I want to thank you. I believe in you. And until next time, see you later. Hi, this is Rod from Boomer Guitar Sessions. I personally wanted to thank you for being part of our community. If you like what we're doing here and you want to see more of it, please hit the like, subscribe, and share. And this helps me spread my musical messages to all over the world. Thank you. I appreciate you. And always remember,